What's up, everyone? John Manza to See Red back again with another episode, and we're kind of starting a new series this summer. I hope everyone's enjoying the start of their summer as we move into mid-June. And before you know it, college football season will be here. We got less than 3 months, less than 90 days until August 30th, when most teams will be starting the college football season, including the Liberty Flames taking on Maine at Williams Stadium. We're going to start a new series previewing some of these football games, or all of the football games, all 12 on Liberty's regular season schedule in order, tackling two at a time each video. I'm not sure this will necessarily run 6 consecutive weeks. We'll see how it goes, but we'll definitely get it in prior to the start of the season and hopefully before training camp gets started is kind of the schedule and the plan. So we're going to do 2 teams at a time, like I said, and we start this week with Maine and Jacksonville State. I do plan on bringing in special guests to help preview at least one of the teams each week, if that works out. And this week we're going to be joined in just a few minutes as we turn our attention to Liberty's Week 2 opponent, Jacksonville State. Thomas Ashworth, he covers the Gamecocks and other activities and schools in northern Alabama for AL.com. Does a great job covering the Gamecocks. And get some insight from him on the defending Conference USA champs and Liberty's Week 2 opponent. So going to kind of start with a preview of the Maine Black Bears, who come to Lynchburg. Like I said, August 30th, season opener for both teams in Lynchburg, Virginia at Williams Stadium. Maine is under 4th-year head coach Jordan Stevens. After going 2-9 each of his first 2 seasons last year, they notched up in the win column to 5 wins, went 5-7 overall. They play in the CAA, the same conference that Liberty's last year opponent, season opening opponent, Campbell, played in. Also, Delaware played in that conference, and now Delaware obviously has joined Conference USA. Delaware is one of the top teams in that league and has been for some time. But anyway, Maine was 3-5 overall in conference, 3-5 in conference play, 5-7 overall, 11th place in, I believe it's a 16-team CAA, one of the top leagues in the FCS. Jordan Stevens, like I mentioned, is their head coach, entering their 4th year. I think, projections around Maine are upbeat. They expect them to continue to see an upward trajectory going into the 4th year under Stevens. And a lot of that is due to him bringing back both his offensive coordinator and his defensive coordinator, the first time in his tenure that he's done that, and add in returning starting quarterback Carter Peavy. Peavy started last year for Maine, helped guide them to that 5-7 record. Peavy was a transfer. He's a veteran. I mean, he's been around college football for several years now. He began his career at Mercer, where he started for a couple of seasons, led them to the FCS playoffs, and actually an FCS playoff win a couple years back, and then transferred to Maine. He's going to try to get back to the playoffs, FCS playoffs, with the Black Bears. So, I mean, if you have a team that returns your head coach, now entering his 4th season, so a lot of the team should take on his identity right now. Should be a lot of the players he recruited and brought in there. And then also, we return both of your coordinators and your starting quarterback, who has some experience and some success. Then I think you feel pretty good about where things are headed. Obviously, taking on a team like Liberty, who is 9-0 against FCS opponents since joining the FBS. So Liberty is unbeaten against FCS teams since joining the FBS ranks back in 2018, 2019. And this includes a win over Maine. Liberty and Maine met once previously. I think that was in 2019 against in Williams Stadium. Under former head coach Hugh Freeze, and Liberty took care of business there in somewhat of a high-scoring game. But Liberty dominated the first, 2 or 3 quarters of that game before, Maine kind of made it a little bit more respectable of a final score there at the end, and that was first-year head coach Hugh Freeze at Liberty then, and Buckshot Calvert and AGG Antonio Gandy Golding as Liberty's quarterback wide receiver combo. They set records that day against Maine. Ended up finishing the day as Liberty's career leaders in both passing and receiving for Buckshot and AGG respectively. So a lot of different teams, as you know, in college football nowadays, teams change a lot year to year. So certainly, when you're looking at a rematch of a game 6 years ago, it's a lot of new faces, obviously new head coaches on both sides. But I think the expectations for Maine is for them to continue to this upward trajectory from where they were 2-9 a couple years ago, early in Stevens' career and his tenure, and then 5-7 last year. And like I said, they got quarterback Carter Peavy back, and I think the expectation for them is to compete in the top half of the CAA. So we'll see how that pans out. And obviously, they come into Lynchburg August 30th as a 4 p.m. kick on ESPN Plus, as was just recently announced. We got lots of kickoff times for the season. So Liberty will be looking to go 10-0 against FCS opponents since moving to the FBS, and start off 1-0 under Coach Chadwell for a third consecutive season, and obviously the second straight year opening up against an FCS opponent, and also against a CAA opponent. So that's Liberty's season opener. And then week 2, Liberty travels down to Jacksonville State, not unlike last year's schedule, opening up with a FCS game at home, and then week 2 going on the road in conference play to play a team that was in the Conference USA Championship game. Obviously, Jack State won the CUSA Championship a year ago, beating Western Kentucky. And last year, Liberty was playing New Mexico State, who had, obviously Liberty and New Mexico State. It was a rematch of that CUSA Championship game. And that was a late kick after 10 o'clock, almost 11 p.m. on the East Coast. So it's a similar type schedule that Conference USA has set up. But we're pleased to bring in Thomas Ashworth now to help give us a preview of the Gamecocks. Thomas, how are you doing today?
Hey, doing good. How are you doing, man?
Good to hear from you. Thanks for joining us and giving us a little bit of time to help preview the Gamecocks. A lot of question marks for this team, I think. As I mentioned in the open, you kind of help cover the Gamecocks for AL.com, and we can get more into where people can find you and connect with you for Liberty fans as we head into that week 2 matchup later. But give us a quick overview of, Jack State. What should we expect out of them? New head coach, some new players, a lot of unknowns for them, I think, right now, as we're talking mid-June.
Yeah, like you said, it's a lot of new stuff. I mean, the quarterback that you saw, the running back that you saw, those are the two were the two leaders of the offense. They're gone. They're playing professionally now, one with the Indoor Football League and one in the NFL with the Vikings. So those guys are gone. A lot of turnover in the secondary. There are a couple of starters that returned, but a lot of them either followed Rich Rod to West Virginia or went on somewhere else. So there's a lot of turnover. And obviously the only retention on staff was Rick Trickett, the offensive line coach. So it's a totally new staff, totally new scheme. As far as what you can expect, I mean, there's a ton of really new players, but I think Coach Kelly and staff has done a pretty good job, as good of a job as they could have of reloading in the time they've had. I think they had, or Coach Kelly said that they had around 40 scholarship players on the roster when he got to Jacksonville State. Excuse me, which obviously is not ideal situation. You're supposed to have 85, I think is the number. So he's had some work to do, but he's gotten some pieces that, you look at them and you're like, oh, these guys are at Jacksonville State. Interesting. The starting quarterback, Gavin Wimsatt, for all intents and purposes right now, he's the starting quarterback. He's a guy that came in from Kentucky. He was the backup last year to Brock Vandegrift. He's a guy that started a full season at Rutgers. He was the starting quarterback at Rutgers a while ago, and he's looking for one final season of college football to, kind of have a place, have an opportunity. The running back will be replaced. It'll be kind of I don't know who the starting running back will be at this point, but Cam Cook, he was TCU's leading rusher last season, is now at Jacksonville State, and he looked very good in the spring game. And then moving over to the wide receivers, which you can expect the ball to be thrown a little more, just because the Rich Rod offense is on the extreme of run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. So pretty much anything is going to be more pass friendly. But there is a good group coming back. Michael Petway, Brock Rexsteiner are guys who finished in the top 4 of receiving last year. So there's a good mix, and that's just the offense specifically, but it's a good example. There's some good leaders coming back that, Jacksonville State's had in the past. Daryl Prater's a guy at nose guard, and Morphin Joseph's a guy at linebacker. There are guys that have been a part of the system for a long time, know what's going on in Jacksonville State, but he's done a good job of kind of filling the holes and finding guys that can, that will look to make an impact this season. So it's a good mix right now.
Yeah, it's kind of looking at Charles Kelly. It's kind of, the difference between him and Rich Rod seem like night and day. I mean, they seem to be completely different types of coaches. I mean, I don't know their personalities as much as you probably do, but Rich Rod obviously was well known in college football ranks, head coach for a long time, obviously West Virginia and other stops, and obviously had some success there at Jack State, and now he's returned back to West Virginia. Whereas Kelly, this is his first head coaching job, at least at the FBS level. He may have been a head coach lower levels previously, but and Rich Rod, offensive coach, offensive mind, kind of changed the game in some ways, in some aspects with his style of offense. Whereas Kelly's a defensive guy, right? He's coming most recently from Auburn. He's been defensive coordinator pretty much, several household names of FBS and P4 football. But what should we expect, or what have you come to learn about Kelly, and what should be the expectations of him as he kind of takes over and moves into a new role as a head coach?
Yeah, last season he was under a guy that Liberty fans are probably a little familiar with. He was defensive coordinator at Auburn, and then moved over to Jacksonville State. He was interviewed at the bowl game, and I know he was one of 4 finalists, I think. So, there was certainly a good pool to pull from. But I mean, as far as his personality, I mean, Rich Rod was really great to talk with, and I think Coach Kelly's kind of the same. I mean, but it's a little bit different in the sense of, I think that Jacksonville State kind of wanted a guy who knew the state, who knew the makeup of the state. He's a guy, he's from Ozark, I think, and he was at, he's been at Auburn, he's been at Alabama under Nick Saban. He was at Jacksonville State, a long time ago. That was one of his first stops. He's been at a couple of high schools in the area, Central Phoenix City and Charles Henderson, I think. He's been at a few stops, and he knows the state. He knows, okay, these are the areas where football is traditionally good, and these are some of the areas where, we need to check out because they're growing, things like that. He understands the state. And I think that's one of the things that you can kind of see from his recruiting is he really wants to hammer the high schools. I mean, he's told us before, it's different because nowadays it's never been harder for a high school player to get a roster spot at the Power 5 level, just because, would you rather take a guy who's at Liberty, who started for 3 seasons, or would you rather take a guy who's a high school prospect who, still has some weight to put on him, and he's kind of part of a process, I guess. So, these players are getting pulled up from Group of 5 and FCS and those kinds of levels to the Power 5. So it kind of leaves these high school players up for grabs. Some of these guys that you look at them, you're like, what are you doing at Jacksonville State? But Coach Kelly and staff, is kind of able to get at them and get a chance. And so that's kind of his recruiting philosophy, is being able to, I think if it were his ideal situation, he would want a team full of guys he's developed and recruited out of high school, but obviously he knows that's not the game anymore. And if your guy's good, he's going to go play at Georgia or Kentucky or other places where he's going to get his money if he plays really well. But that's kind of the recruiting aspect. As far as the play on the field, he got a guy, Clint Trickett, at offensive coordinator. Obviously he was a quarterback for a little while, so he knows how to throw the ball, and he knows that it's important. But he's a guy that's been at the Group of 5 level as a coordinator for a little while. He's at Marshall, a few other stops on staff. So you could expect a little bit more throwing the ball in defense. I think that you probably saw Coach Kelly's defense some last year. I mean, it's pretty hard-nosed. It's aggressive, and I think that he's not afraid to make some plays. So, but it's just kind of comes down to what's this staff going to look like as far as personnel on the field stuff. And we haven't gotten that good a look just because there's so many new guys on this team, and there's a lot of turnover. So the spring game, I don't think a spring game is really a good way to tell exactly what the defense is going to look like against real live opponents. But it's going to be interesting to see who lines up on the 11 on the first game of the season.
Yeah, spring games, you've heard a lot of talk about those, like should they be revamped or gone away with. You saw Colorado and Deion Sanders talking about wanting to, do a scrimmage of some kind. And I think spring games have always been like, obviously a scrimmage and maybe a little bit of a preview of the next year's team. But now, especially, Liberty's spring game was back in early March. So it was before, and a lot of teams are doing it before the spring transfer portal window. So you don't even know, some of those key players from Liberty's defense specifically are no longer here. So it's like we don't really know what to expect. I'm sure it's the same thing, maybe even more so at a place like Jack State where you had a first-year head coach coming in, and then you had the spring transfer portal window. So it's kind of like what's going on. But you mentioned the offensive coordinator and also Gavin Wimsatt, which I'd like for you to, give us a little bit more of an expectation of what you think we'll see out of this Jack State offense. Like you mentioned a couple of times about more of a passing game. Obviously, Rich Rod, we know about running the ball, and they came into Lynchburg last year and without much of a passing threat, just ran the ball over Liberty's defense and did that to a win and did that to Conference USA championship last year in a very successful season. Making it to the Cure Bowl. But Wimsatt, I know the name. He's, highly rated out of high school and transferred around a little bit. But what should we expect out of him? Is he a dual threat type guy? And what type of offense do you expect? I know, obviously, with, Rich Rod, it was high tempo, fast pace, one of the fastest offenses in the country. What do you expect from what you know so far about this Jack State offense and out of their quarterback, Wimsatt? What should we see maybe week 2 down in Jacksonville, Alabama?
Yeah, this guy, he's 6'3", 225 pounds, right around there. So he's a guy that has, he has a good build for, high, whether it's getting to the end zone, with 3 yards out or, what have you, or taking hits. So he's a guy that's probably going to be durable. If you look at him, I know that he ran the ball a few times, last season at Kentucky. He had 183 rushing. I'm looking at it now. He had 183 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns on 49 carries as the backup. So he's a guy that can run the ball. So I'm sure you're going to see a lot of that from him. But he's certainly capable of doing that. And then, just passing the ball, I think that his receivers help him a lot. I think it looks like from the outside looking in, he's meshed really well with the receivers that he's got. Pretty quickly, honestly. Michael Petway, Brock Rextener, guys that you're probably familiar with. You've seen them, over the last few years at Jacksonville State. They've been a part of 3 head coaching regimes, and so they're back. Michael Petway is a guy this is his 7th season of college football. What's going on? But they call him, grandpa around the locker room. So he's a guy that obviously knows college football pretty well. Then they got I'd say a pretty good end zone threat. DeAndre Johnson's a guy, or Jordan Johnson. He's a guy that, he came in, he was at Rutgers last season. He's 6'8". So you could probably expect to get the ball in the end zone. So he's a guy that, provides a good end zone threat for guys. The tight end room is going to be a little bit different, but it might, it just kind of depends on, personnel and all that stuff as far as the usage of the tight ends. But, there's some pretty good receivers in that room. And I think that helps, especially with a quarterback who, coming in at the group of 5 level, kind of understanding specifically with Coach Kelly and Coach Trickett, what's going on. But I think that's really a plus for him, is having those wide receivers. But he's impressed a lot of people in camp. I think that, it's not that people have been surprised by his, his acumen and the way he carries himself. But I think he's been a really impressive, it's been a pretty impressive few months for him on campus. I think that people are excited for him. They're excited for the opportunity he gets, and they have some good quarterbacks behind him. So, if something happens, there's Cade Cunningham and Caden Creel and Jack Moran and those guys behind him who have been in the system a long time or understand college football or just really talented, so there's a good group behind him. But Wimsatt is the guy, and he's been pretty impressive so far.
Thomas, once again, thank you for joining us, help give us a preview of Jack State. One last question for you before we move on. Kind of talking about expectations. What's kind of the fan base's expectations from what you've heard and seen online and maybe from talking to some people? And, obviously coming off a very successful tenure under Rich Rod, very successful transition from FCS to FBS and Conference USA, obviously winning conference championship last year. But obviously a lot of change now, is the expectation to continue to compete at the top of Conference USA? Do you think, trying to get back to a bowl game is kind of the goal this year, or what do you think kind of the expectations are around this program? Obviously Jack State's had a lot of success, even going back to the FCS days, Liberty and Jack State have met a couple times there, and Jack State got the best of those matchups too. So they've had a lot of success against the Flames and obviously in their transition. Under Charles Kelly first year, what's kind of the tenor of the fan base as far as their expectations going into this season?
Yeah, I talked with a recruit yesterday, actually, who's going on a visit this weekend, and he was talking about the expectations that they talked about, and the expectations are that they won a championship last year, they're going to do the same again, and that's just inside the building, obviously, and you're going to say that, but it genuinely seems like everybody I've talked to has said, "Oh, I'm here because this is what Coach Kelly said. This is what the staff said. We're going to win a championship. That's the goal." It's never not going to be that. But as far as the staff is concerned, I mean, they're confident. I think that the staff that coaches put together has been really good. And honestly, if you look at the bottom half of Conference USA, there's certainly opportunity to contend pretty quickly as far as, the depth of the conference just isn't great. Specifically, you look at last season. But this season, I think that, it might be a little bit better, but there's certainly opportunity for Jacksonville State to remain in the top. But I think they've done a really good job of getting players, and these players are not just, your guys that were at the Power 5 level and are coming down just because they want a shot. Some of them are genuine players who have seen a lot of the field. They've started, they've been really good players for some programs. So I think that the confidence is high in the building. I think that people like Coach Kelly, his staff, a lot. I think that there's no reason that Jacksonville State can't find themselves atop. I do think that there's a lot of challenges when you're talking about, are they going to win a championship in year one? Obviously, there's a lot to that, but I do certainly think that they'll still be in the top half of Conference USA. And I think they're confident that they can, that the sky's the limit for that team.
Yeah, good stuff. Appreciate your time once again. Thomas, tell the Liberty fans watching this, maybe other Jack State fans, they probably know about you already, but Conference USA football fans maybe watching this, how can they connect with you this upcoming football season?
Yeah, Liberty fans, I mean, you're welcome to ignore me until week 2 of the season when Liberty goes to Jacksonville, Alabama. But we'll have a lot of stuff coming that week on AL.com. We have, all the previews, all the things Coach Kelly says about Liberty, good or bad, that'll be on there. Obviously, there's a lot of respect for Liberty, but it should be a good matchup. I think there's a really good rivalry between those teams just because of the past. But, it should be a fun matchup. And I know that fans are excited about that week 2 matchup for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Thomas, once again, thanks, man, and I appreciate it. Look forward to hopefully meeting up with you down in Jacksonville. Hopefully it won't be too hot, a noon kickoff Eastern time. So that's going to be a hot one in early September, I'm sure, down in Alabama. But thank you again for your time.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for Thomas for joining us, and looking forward to that week 2 matchup, Liberty and Jack State. It's kind of maybe a preview of what to be expected of Conference USA Championship in 2025. And if whoever wins that game, whether it's Liberty or Jack State, you set yourself up. First of all, you set yourself up to continue to be in contention for the Conference USA Championship race, and you feel pretty good about yourselves coming out of that game. I mean, nobody, I don't think, would have a conference win that impressive that early in the season, whether you're beating the 2023 Conference USA champ or the 2024 Conference USA champ, which if Liberty did that, it'd also be on the road. So it's a key game early in the season. Right now, as you heard from Thomas, we don't know a lot about the Jack State team. We know a little bit, right? New coach, new quarterback, new coordinators. Same thing, with Liberty. Obviously, returning coaching staff, but a lot of question marks on, both sides of the ball. So it's going to be really interesting. And Liberty opens with Maine. Jack State opens with UCF. I think that's either a Thursday night or Friday night game the week before. So we may know a little bit more about the Gamecocks, going into week 2 than we do Liberty. But you also have to remember last year, Jack State opened with a dud on Thursday night in week 1 against Coastal Carolina, got absolutely embarrassed. And they kind of started off slow the first 2 or 3 games of the year and then turned it on and won a bunch in a row and ended up winning the Conference USA Championship. So it'll be a good test, I think, for both teams, a good litmus test, a good early season, gauntlet, I guess, early season judge as to where both of these teams are in this season and kind of what the pecking order is in Conference USA race for 2025. I think, a lot of people are picking Liberty as a preseason favorites, but that's probably just based on pedigree. And the only other team that you'll probably see him picked up there is Western Kentucky. And that's just because both of those programs, have been up at the top the last couple of years and they return their coaching staff. Jack State's competed at the top the last couple of years. They got a new coaching staff, so it's a lot of unknowns there. So that's definitely a game that both teams, I'm sure, have got circled on their calendars early in the year, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there. It's not going to be an easy game for either team, and for Liberty wanting to get back to the level they were at 2023, where they went undefeated in the regular season. That's obviously a game they want to win, but it's not going to be an easy one. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. So appreciate Thomas once again. Great insight into the Gamecocks and how things are going for them here in June as we move closer and closer to college football season. Stay tuned. We'll continue this preview. The next one we do will be week 3 and 4 for the Flames as Liberty steps back out of conference play for 3 straight games following the Jack State game before going all into conference play. So our next preview on the college football season will be Bowling Green and James Madison. So obviously 2 games that we got a lot to talk about and a little bit of a rivalry there for Liberty and JMU. So be on the lookout for that, and we'll keep this season preview series rolling throughout the summer. Thanks, guys. Take care.